Good afternoon, everyone. We are convening our Education and Culture Committee meeting today to discuss our Montgomery County Public Schools Capital Improvements Program amendments to their budget and discuss some of an overview of their affordability issues, as well as generally what's going on with MCPS's CIP. And so we have today joining us the president of the Montgomery County Public Schools Board of Education, Ms. Brenda Wolf. We've got Ms. Adrienne Karamias, who's the director of Division of Capital Planning. We have Ms. Essie McGuire, Associate Superintendent of Operations, Mr. Seth Adams, Director of the Department of Facilities Management for Montgomery County Public Schools, Ms. Mary Beck, CIP Manager with the Office of Management and Budget, and Ms. Veronica Jua, who is the Fiscal and Policy Analyst for Office of Management and Budget. And so I really want to thank all of you for joining us today. Of course, we are talking about a topic that always is not easy. We continue to not have enough money to fund all of the projects that we know are important and needed for our school system and struggle every single year. This year will be no different. However, we continue to prioritize understanding that, as we saw with the council's action at the end, at the end of last year / beginning of this year, with the writing of the challenges associated with South Lake Elementary School, we continue to be committed to making sure that projects prioritized by the board and by this community remain at the forefront. So really want to thank the partnership between the Board of Education, Montgomery County Public Schools leadership, the greater community, and council staff and county executive staff for continuing to try and come together and prioritize projects that we know are going to make significant differences in our community. And so just really want to thank you for that. I want to thank Mr. Levchenko for another very detailed packet that lays out a lot of the challenges that we find ourselves in, some of the decision points that we will have to make at some point, as well as some of the requests that we'll need to make of our Montgomery County Public Schools. But before we begin, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Ms. Wolf, President of the Board of Education, for any opening comments you'd like to make, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Good afternoon. I'm Brenda Wolf, President of the Board of Education. I'm pleased to be here, and on behalf of my board colleagues, I'm here to discuss the board's capital budget and capital improvements program. The board has been very restrained in our requests for funding as we understand the difficult position the county is in right now as a result of COVID. The CIP consists of high priority projects that will address our aging infrastructure and bring much needed space and facility improvements to our school communities. Understanding that this is an amendment year, the board's requested FY 2022 capital budget amendments include only $3.67 million more than the adopted CIP. We look forward to working with you throughout these deliberations and helping to identify the funding needed to meet our request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wolf. And I want to turn to our superintendent's office. And so I'd like Ms. McGuire. Ms. Wright, if you could enable Ms. McGuire's video, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. McGuire, our Associate Superintendent of Operations, for a few opening comments as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate being here today to review with the Education and Culture Committee our requested amendments, the board's requested amendments to the FY 21 through 26 Capital Improvements Program. As Ms. Wolf said, the board did put forward a very modest request. What we really tried to do in this CIP also was align the funds that were approved in last year's action by the council to support high priority projects. And in some areas that did lead us to an alignment and a realignment of funds in projects where we were able to take a different direction to really support those additional priorities, focus in very intensely on our aging infrastructure, which we know we need to continue to tend to. and also on some of our very high priority projects and our major capital projects as well, to keep those on track to the maximum extent possible. So again, what you'll see here is a very targeted and tailored capital improvements program that is intended to put forward our highest priorities. I also just would like to highlight that while this year certainly we are experiencing a decrease in enrollment, which you will see in the board's CIP submission, we fully expect that this is an anomaly, and we fully expect that those students will return to us. And so we also are planning to look ahead to that return and to look ahead to how to really, again, be sure that we can address the needs of all of our students as students begin to return to school in person, and as hopefully all of us begin to return to a more regular state of our in-person operations. So again, just emphasizing that we really, again, anticipate that this enrollment decrease is a blip. Our forward-looking enrollment and our forward-looking capital improvements program does look ahead to our analysis of many of those students returning back to MCPS as we go forward. So with that, we're happy to work through the review, and thank you again for the opportunity to begin this review with you.
Well, thank you very much to both you, Ms. McGuire, and to you, President Wolf. We appreciate your comments, and definitely want to continue to work with you as we navigate the ever-challenging times we find ourselves in. We're promised by, and I forgot to mention, our state delegation, who continues to fight for additional state funding, which we know we need, the Built to Learn Act, and we'll certainly address that as a part of the packet when I turn this over to Mr. Levchenko. But certainly there are other initiatives that are in the works that continue to prioritize school construction funding, and so we'll be supportive of all of those, and really want to thank the delegates and senators for their great work in continuing to push this effort forward. Unfortunately, it all starts with the governor's proposed budget, and there it's where we still fall woefully short. I've said the same thing about Governor O'Malley when Governor O'Malley was proposing budgets, and I'll say the same thing about Governor Hogan. Still not meeting the needs of our schools in 24 jurisdictions all across the state of Maryland. That certainly provide challenges for us and make us make some really tough and difficult decisions as a locality. That's not how it should be. And so with that, let me turn it over to Mr. Levchenko to start walking us through the packet.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Rice. Yeah, just to summarize what I think we'll be talking about today, at least to the way the packet is structured, we have a very brief discussion about affordability or general affordability in the CIP. And Ms. Navarro is obviously very familiar with this because the GO committee took this up fairly recently. And then the council actually sort of did it by consent. So there was not a lot of discussion at the council, but Ms. Navarro can certainly speak to any issues she'd like to bring up regarding the GO committee. And then we'll get into the board request, and MCPS staff can do a pretty concise presentation of that. Then we'll talk briefly about the executive recommendations and the implications of those, and then going forward, some of the issues we have to deal with, including state aid that you mentioned, but also just in terms of how we get from here to May action. So with that, just briefly about affordability. On February 2nd, the council approved its spending affordability assumptions for the 21 through 26 amended CIP. They were essentially the same as what the executive is recommending, with one exception with regard to FY22 PAYGO in the CIP. The executive had recommended cutting FY22 PAYGO in half to help further support the operating budget. However, the council, at least at this time, did not want to change the PAYGO assumption for FY22. So at least for now, we have an extra $15 million within the CIP arena, if you will, going forward. Although, once again, the council can reconsider that between now and CIP reconciliation. And as was heard during the spending affordability discussions, it is a constrained situation, both because the bonds, the GEO bonds associated with the affordability approval from last year is assumed to gradually tighten a bit over time and try to bring our overall debt down. So we're not seeing extra room on the geo bond side. And then, as you've heard exhaustively in a number of different arenas, our revenue situation is also very much in flux. So we don't have a lot of relief coming there. So those combined mean that we have a fairly tight CIP process this year. Now, we are in an amendment year, so we're not seeing a lot of new initiatives. And as was mentioned earlier, the board's request is relatively light in terms of number of amendments and in terms of the 6-year total spending increase. So we're not planning, at least hoping not to have to revisit the entire CIP across the board, but we'll see as we get closer to CIP reconciliation. With that, I did want to see if OMB staff, either Ms. Beck or Ms. Jawa, had anything else they wanted to add on the general affordability side, and see if they had further comments there.
Thank you, Mary Beck with Office of Management and Budget. I would just say that this was a very difficult CIP. This was a very difficult CIP for us this year. As MCPS stated, it was a fairly restrained request in terms of the overall increase. It was a little bit front-loaded. Some things were more accelerated, which is always a challenge, but overall it was pretty restrained. The real story is the revenue shortfalls, as Keith mentioned. Over $260 million reduction in operating for 21 and 22. And, you know, then the impact taxes and recordation taxes as well. So when we added all that together, that was part of what led to sort of the relatively extreme recommendations to pull back on PAYGO. That is not something that we have done since I've been in this role. I certainly hope we can figure things out better, and I continue to be optimistic about Build to Learn, but I'm also somewhat frightened about it and the match requirements that it might imply. And this is why, quite honestly, I would have preferred that we look at any increases in recordation taxes as a possible source for additional match for schools beyond what we were already sort of planning to do. So I think that, you know, we're planning to work very closely with council staff and MCPS staff to map out the different scenarios that might occur. And I know something we talked about at the GO committee was also really, it would be very helpful to have an early reconciliation of the CIP with all of our key revenue assumptions known at that time, because balancing the CIP is more difficult because it's multi-year. And when we delay something in one year, we cause problems in later years. And I think it also gives us a chance to look at what we've done. And sometimes we catch mistakes. And then we have a few weeks to fix them without sort of some extreme circumstances. And I think hopefully we can work towards that kind of arrangement this year. I think it would help all of us feel better with our outcome in May, so we don't have to go back and kind of make corrections later. But I know this is a very solid partnership with all of the players involved, and we look forward to working together to help put together the best possible CIP we can for schools. And I did want to just mention too, we did have some funding in the executive's recommended budget for linkages to learning and school-based health center at South Lakes. And also there's a linkages to learning plan for Neilsville Middle School. I did want to make you aware of that. Thank you.
So let me turn to our chair of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. As Mr. Lechenko noted, the council has adopted the spending affordability guidelines. When the GO committee had an opportunity to discuss these, as it was stated, we rejected the notion of reducing PAYGO to 50% because we are also very cognizant of the fact that we have to engage in a much more comprehensive discussion about fiscal policies and examination to determine whether the council, along with the executive, can agree on whether we want to maintain our current fiscal policies and targets whether we want to modify some of them, all of them. This is an in-depth discussion that obviously we're going to engage in very soon. We are, of course, always tracking our debt service, and although there's been a slight improvement in that, we understand that that is still a real challenge for us as well. And all of this taken together is really important regarding our AAA bond rating. So there are a lot of moving targets that we are monitoring right now, and that we will continue to address with some experts that have mainly the Davenport report that we will be examining as a full council, and council members are going to be briefed. But all of this, again, is really important as we also take into consideration the unexpected and very unprecedented challenges that COVID-19 has presented to us. And so with all of that together, there is no doubt that the GEO committee will be super busy, and the council, as well as finance and OMB, we will all be working really hard to ultimately do whatever we can and continue to advocate at the state level, of course, as things begin to fall into place. So just wanted to summarize that this was really the thinking of the GEO committee. And again, the council did affirm that decision, and we continue to, of course, want to work with the Board of Education, with Ms. Wolf, as well as the superintendent to do whatever we can to get ourselves into a optimal situation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Let me turn it back over to you, Mr. Levchenko.
Okay, now I'm going to share my screen and bring up some charts, and then we'll also go into the schools request, and we'll have the school staff lead that. But let me first bring up a couple charts for you. Okay, this is table 1, which you should see on your screen now. This is in the packet, and it summarizes the numbers, the 6-year numbers and the numbers by fiscal year. It gets at a little bit of what you were hearing earlier, that you see the original approved 1.728 million. Then you have the Board of Education's amendments, which the total brings it up only to about 1.731 or 32 billion. So very small in the 6-year total. You do have some increases in the first few years, however, that is creating what Ms. Beck mentioned, the general affordability across fiscal years, which can be very challenging. And so you see in 21, 22, and 23, you have increases, 6 million, 10.6 million, and about 3.7 million. Then you have decreases in the last few years. And this is not unexpected, given that the school system moves in design and then construction of projects. And generally speaking, in amendment years, we're looking at only projects affecting those first few years. So it's not unexpected to see projects move into this time frame and see projects moving from what may have just been planning money into adding construction dollars. So these numbers are relatively small compared to past years' amendment requests. So I would note that. And then you can see the executive's recommended number, which we'll get to after the schools request. So with that summary, I'm going to turn it over to MCPS to run through their slides quickly and go over what's in their amendment request. So I'm going to bring that up.
Keith, could you just mention the acceleration issue, though? I don't want to give a false impression that they were cut by 100.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good point. Very good point. I'm sorry. Let me bring that back up. Yes, the other thing you may notice with the executive request is it's substantially lower even than the approved budget in the 6 years. But a very good portion of it, and I've noted this in the packet, has to do with implementation between FY20, FY21, and FY22. And what OMB did as part of its development of the executive's recommended amendments was to reflect actual expenditures in FY20. And in a number of cases, the schools were able to move forward with projects faster than originally anticipated. Some of this may have been related to the COVID issue, and they can certainly get into that. But several significant projects had dollars that moved from 22 and 21 into 20. So they're not showing up in the 6-year total. And we can talk about that with the executive recommendation. I do show the technical amendments, which those are, versus the substantive changes that would be needed to the board's request, so that it's clear that we're not looking at a $120 million change that would be needed from the board's request in terms of substantive cuts. We're looking at a significantly smaller number, still a significant number, but smaller than this. So that is a good point that Mary mentioned. We do have those technical adjustments we'll get into in a minute. With that, I'll bring it back to the slides and allow Ms. McGuire or Ms. Karmihas or Mr. Adams, whoever is going to run us through this.
So can everybody hear me? This is Adrienne Karmihas. I will run through the slides. We just have a handful summarizing the Board of Education's request. As Keith alluded to, the amended CIP totals $1.73 billion. And that is an increase of $3.6 million over the adopted CIP. The additional expenditures, as we did discuss, are minimal. However, the amendments do provide funding for new capital projects, the acceleration of previously approved capital projects, and additional funding for vital countywide systemic projects. The amendments include reductions and reallocations of approved expenditures, which did result in more fiscally responsible requested CIP. And we will go through those amendments here. So next slide, please. So
Sorry, go ahead.
there you go. That's it. So to start with the amendments, the first removes all expenditures for the Bethesda Elementary School addition project. That was a previously approved addition project. And the request reallocates $4.4 million of the $16.7 million that was in that addition project to reinstate the Westbrook Elementary School addition project, which was removed as part of reconciliation in the adopted CIP, and that would have a completion date of September 2023. The second amendment would remove a portion of expenditures from the Silver Spring International Middle School addition project and reallocate that portion for the construction of the Highland View Elementary School addition project. The requested completion date for the Silver Spring International Middle School addition project is September 2024, and the requested completion date for the Highland View Elementary School addition project is September 2025. Next slide, please. The next amendments remove all expenditures from the Cresthaven and Roscoe R. Nix Elementary School addition projects and reallocate those expenditures for a new grades 3 through 5 elementary school for Joanne Lealick Elementary School at Broad Acres with a completion date of September 2025. And the next amendment accelerates the construction funds for the William Tyler Page Elementary School addition project. The acceleration aligns with the Board of Education's request in the FY 2021-2026 CIP. So a completion date of September 2023. Next. For the major capital projects, the request is to accelerate expenditures for those elementary schools included in this group of projects, which is Southlake, Woodland, Stonegate Elementary Schools. The completion dates that are being requested align with the Board of Education's requested 21 to 26 CIP completion dates, with the exception of Stonegate Elementary School. Stonegate Elementary School is requested to be accelerated 6 months ahead of last year's Board of Education request due to the ability to utilize the Carl Sandburg Learning Center as another holding facility. So all of these elementary schools are being requested with completion dates of September 2023. And finally, the next group of amendments have to do with our countywide systemic projects. There is in the request an additional $5 million in FY 2022 for our HVAC project, $3.185 million in FY 22 for our PULAR project, and an additional $1 million in FY 2022 for our roof replacement project. All these additional funds do align with the Board of Education's request in the 21-26 CIP. And I think that is it.
Yep, and just to summarize the numbers, let me bring those up. This is the board's request with all the amendments you just heard and how the numbers shake out in the years. And you can see at the bottom has the totals that you saw on the earlier chart. And you can see the numbers up in 21, 22, and 23, and then down in 24, 25, and 26. So this chart is in the packet. So if council members are wondering what project affects what year, this chart is helpful for that. If there's any questions regarding the board's request, now would be a good time. Although I think staff's perspective is we're not planning on getting into a deep discussion of projects at this point. We are going to see we're going to have a separate meeting, most likely at the end of or mid to late March, where we can dig into all these projects. But if council members had some particular questions now, this would be a good time to get those answered by MCPS.
Turn to my colleagues. Seeing none? Oh, Councilmember Tawanda.
I just wanted to chime in now. I guess it's as good a time as any. Just thank President Wolf and MCPS for Ms. McGuire and colleagues for presenting. And thank you for explaining that we were able to get things done a little quicker. That's always a good thing for some of those projects. I guess the question on the main question I had, the major capital projects, so South Lake, this includes this acceleration includes that and these other projects on here. Maybe you're getting to this, Keith, but if you could explain, I think your recommendation is that they come back with, since the state money is uncertain, to come back to us with the recommended cut in line with the executive so that we can consider all of this and not make a full decision until we have a little more information. Is that the gist of it? I might be jumping the gun, but I wanted to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, you're revealing my big recommendation at the end of the packet. But
oh, I'm sorry.
That's the big reveal, Councilmember Tawanda.
I messed it up.
Yeah, in past years, and we did this last year, and we've done it in previous years. We like to give the school system a chance to react to the executive's recommendation first, so that we have a package to look at, as opposed to having to go through these piecemeal and make the puzzle work ourselves without having the benefit of the schools at least providing some context for us. With that said, ultimately it will be the council's decision at the end how to balance, but it is extremely helpful to get the priorities from the school system in as whatever level of detail we can in advance of that, understanding that they're not recommending any, I mean, this is their recommendation. So they're not recommending any cuts that they may send to us as ways that they would meet the executive's numbers. So with that caveat, yes, the approach you just mentioned is what staff is recommending to the committee today to adopt.
Okay, I appreciate it. That's helpful, and I appreciate that. I know that these are tough times, so the board's request is certainly reasonable as is, but I think obviously we have to weigh these competing factors. So, all right, thank you, Mr. President or Mr. Chairman.
All right, I'd like to turn to the executive recommendation at this point. I'm going to bring up another chart which shows the executive's numbers. And this will also make clear the technical adjustments versus the substantive reductions. And I'll ask OMB to pipe in at any point here. I'm just going to summarize how to read this chart, which also appears in the packet. First, I have a section of technical adjustments, and these are mostly the accelerations that were mentioned earlier. And of particular note, Seneca Valley High School had substantial increases in expenditures. This was made possible by the fact that they did have, the project was fully appropriated, so they had the authority to spend the dollars, and they were able to spend the dollars faster than had been shown on the project description form approved last year. So those numbers had to be adjusted to reflect the reality, as with some of these other smaller numbers. So those numbers in total reduced the 6-year requirement by about $68 million. Now that's not free money. We had to find the room in FY20, and there's lots of projects throughout the CIP moving back and forth within 20, 21, and 22. So that's not to say that frees up resources in 21. Those resources had to be allocated into 20. But for purposes of this chart, which is just showing the 6 years, you have a pretty significant difference showing. And then we had a couple of adjustments that the executive made to reflect some updated projects in the CIP. The Joanne Lelec Elementary School, their recommendation to delete 2 projects and create this new project required us to also include some existing spending that had occurred in the earlier projects. And since the Lelec project doesn't exist yet, we have to put it in the first year of that project. So that's why you see a number there. And then there was a state aging schools supplemental that was approved by the council that is also reflected in FY21. So those numbers are added. But what you really get to in terms of substance in this CIP is the affordability reconciliation project. This is a placeholder project that the executive uses to balance the CIP within MCPS, and they also uses it in the college as well. But in this case, and it's not unusual, we see negative numbers, especially in the early years, although in this case it's all but the last year. And these numbers would be needed to be met in order to get to the executive's number. So there are not projects identified yet, but the projects by year would have to add up to these amounts of cuts in order to get to the executive's recommended number. And you may recall earlier that the $120 million in changes is there, but what's really needed substantively is about $53 million in changes in the 6 years, and most notably those first few years, which is typically the hardest for us because that's where a lot of the projects that have moved into the CIP are, or projects that are already in the CIP have significant spending. So that can be the biggest challenge. But with that, I'll turn it to Ms. Beck if she wants to elaborate more on the executive's strategy for balancing the CIP.
Sure, thank you. One thing I would point out where Keith mentioned the accelerations up at the top, the $68 million reduction in the 6 years, if we had a column that was showing the prior to FY21, you'd see a positive 68.377. So just so everybody's clear, it is a net zero situation. I think on the affordability reconciliation, we really had a hard time. About $68 million of the reductions of recordation taxes and impact taxes were in funding sources that are specified to be used for schools. Now, just because, quote unquote, their funding sources went down, that does not mean that we put all the reductions on schools. We really tried to spread it out and have everyone help to participate, but there's really no way to protect schools since they are the biggest part of the CIP. I think that, out of the 68 million of their funding sources, about 48 million is related to GO bond reductions in this affordability adjustment. I would also say that in FY21, $3.5 million of that 5 million relates to the HVAC supplemental that was originally requested. Council approved a portion of it, and we're just assuming that's all that gets approved at this point. We're assuming either federal aid or maybe fund balance or some other way can be found to help pay those additional costs. I think this is going to be a very tricky process for all of us. We're going to have to consider how what we do affects potential state aid. It's obviously, it shouldn't drive everything, but it should be something we acknowledge. For instance, schools has been very aggressive about pursuing state aid reimbursement for their HVAC and their roof replacement. If we decide, oh, we're going to whack, the level of effort projects to try and balance, we are cutting out 50% funding from the state potentially. So there's going to be complexities there. We've also all been trying to figure out the best way to incorporate racial equity considerations. We've assigned census tracts to all CIP projects so that we can then analyze income data, demographic data. We've input some of the farms data from MCPS and their school demographic data so that we can run reports and look at maps and those kinds of things. So this is an evolving process, but it adds a layer of complexity, and again, sort of argues for us having as much time as possible to think this through, because there are many layers to the thought process that I think we'll all want to consider as we try to come to the best solutions.
All right, let me call on Councilmember Giwando.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Ms. Beck,
Yes.
you know, in the county executive's transmittal memo last month, and you've alluded to it a couple times, I just want to make sure we're clear for the millions watching at home, as I like to say, what the reason is for these reductions in the 6-year CIP for critical, as we all agree, critical infrastructure needs and projects for our schools. And I'll just read this memo. You can correct me if I'm wrong. The SSP, or now the Growth and Infrastructure Policy, formerly the Subdivision Staging Policy, there was a reduction and an overall lowering in the impact taxes that go to schools to fund these transportation and school projects. That was $51.5 million.
Correct.
In the 6 year. So explain how that's related to what you've done in here.
Well, it's definitely a driver, because the first step we take is really looking at what resources do we have. We get updated revenue estimates from Department of Finance, and we also go through the SAG review process. We're talking with council staff, and we try to figure out how big is the pot of money. And then we have to determine how will it be spent. And I think that very definitely the growth policy did cost us over $50 million. And with much of that coming out of schools, $35.3 million. And on recordation taxes, those revenues are still increasing. They're just not slated to increase at the same rate they were. I will tell you, thank goodness that we all, at the last minute last year, adjusted the FY21 recordation tax estimates and wrote them down. Because if that provided a cushion and a buffer, frankly, that is allowing us to weather some of the pay-go reductions and the other kinds of things that we wanted to do. If we had not done that, the recordation tax write-downs would have been much more. So again, COVID has been very hard because nobody knew how long it was going to go on for.
Right.
And we're still at some level at that point, although at least thankfully we feel there's a little light in the tunnel with the vaccines now getting out, but still. And then, like I said, on the operating side, $260 million revenue reductions on the operating side over 2 years. I've not seen us pull back on pay-go like this, but again.
So Ms. Beck,
Yeah.
let me just say that again, this isn't a productive part of our conversation as we're talking about CIP, trying to rehash council decisions. So respectfully, let's try and keep on target here with where we are right now with what's before us.
I'm sorry, I thought he was asking about sort of the revenue pot. That was a part of our thought process, and I understand council has decided they want to wait on the FY22. That's very reasonable.
No, I appreciate that. And I wanted to get the sense of, I think we need to know, and the public needs to know, okay, well, this is what part of the reason why we're writing these, these reductions are being recommended. And it has a real impact. So that context is helpful. Obviously, we still have to deal with what's going to happen in the state. Obviously, you mentioned COVID in the implications there. We still do have to deal with the recordation tax issue at some point, which could mitigate and will have an impact on some of this. So, all right, I appreciate it. That's helpful, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So in context, let me just be very clear. And the reason why I don't want to go down this rabbit hole is because then we can talk about differential pay and $100 million that the county is expending in that the council didn't have a decision in, that the county executive made. Let's not go down this road of trying to shift as to why we are in the situation we are. We all agree that we do have challenges in terms of affordability, and figure out a way to move forward together in terms of how we can address it. I think that's the productive way for us to make sure that we're moving forward, because there's plenty of blame to lay all across the board. So with that, let me turn to Councilmember Navarro.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I think it is definitely not productive to be selective about, particular elements that is in play here. I mean, a lot of the decisions made, in the growth policy, the decisions that are into the future, specifically as projects might come to bear or not. So, I know that we have to look at assumptions and things of that nature. I understand that. That's what we always do. But I don't think it's responsible to be framing this as the reason why. Again, especially because as Council Chairman Rice has just stated, there are many other decisions that have an impact on the overall pot of money. And so, I think that is important for us to frame and explain. I mean, there will be a time when hopefully, if some of these projects move forward, there are going to be other benefits. We discussed this ad nauseum during our growth policy discussions. But at this moment in time, those projects are not being built. So, it is important to project and understand where we are. But again, I've been here for a little while during even more difficult times. And, we all have to adjust when we have to adjust, and we will do that. But just wanted to state that I don't think that helps this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, and it is interesting in bringing about one of the pieces that's tied into this. Look, I'm very tied to our real estate industry. I talk to them quite often and am following very closely what's happening with record all-time high increases in home values. And those certainly have a huge impact. And so the last time that we had the Department of Finance before them, I actually asked them about that. And they didn't have an answer for me. They weren't as aware as I was of some of the significant changes that GCAR had told us were happening. Housing sales, while not frequent, are just producing at these incredible rates. And in fact, rates are slated over the next year to increase by 30%. 30%. So, in terms of projections, I think that there's a lot of guesswork that's involved and a lot of money that's still being left on the table when it comes to what it is that we may see. We are not going to come out of the challenges that we face with COVID anytime soon. And because of that, they're actually driving up home values. And because they're driving up home values, that actually means that those people who are continuing to sell are going to be paying even higher taxes. And so from that perspective, it's one to where we can actually reap the benefits of those things that are happening. So let me turn back to Mr. Levchenko to keep us moving.
Sure, I'm just going to end the share screen. Just a couple more issues to talk about more in general with regard to going forward. The first one was mentioned earlier, state aid assumptions. For FY21, the total approved or awarded to MCPS was about 54.8 million. For FY22, we're assuming 58.7. And preliminary indications, as I've noted in the packet, are that we're going to get pretty close to that, or maybe above it, hopefully. But the real issue, as Ms. Beck mentioned, really kicks in the out years, where we are assuming increases in state aid based on the Built to Learn Act dollars, which appear to be heading our way, but which create eligibility concerns. And we tried to put in what we felt were reasonable numbers last year, understanding that we have a lot of work to do with MCPS and with the state to try to see how we can better predict the amounts we may get and what we need to program in order to get them. Potential eligibility changes or changes in MCPS's practices to make them available for more eligibility. So there's a lot of work to still go on there. And the only caution I have today for the committee is that these are a work in progress, and we may have to make some tough decisions in the CIP, partly because of uncertainty over state aid.
Yeah, and it's certainly something in which, as the council's representative to MACO, we've been paying very close attention to. We had a meeting this past Wednesday, and Secretary Brinkley was on the call, and we talked to him about the governor's stated commitment to education, namely in terms of school construction. And while we were promised with the Built to Learn Act really to what Ms. Beck said, the tie-in of us having to match and come up with that additional money is concerning. And so we brought that before the General Assembly to look at ways in which we can continue, at least for the beginning years where we know that local jurisdictions are struggling, but still need to move things forward if things can be floated to allow for some flexibility. And so there's conversations that are being had in Annapolis about that right now. So I just wanted to share that with my colleagues, with, as Councilmember Duwanda says, the millions that are watching at home, to make sure that they know that these things are being talked about right now. And that's why I said at the outset that I really wanted to thank our delegation who continues to work with us hand in hand to really try and address some of these issues that rightfully so are very concerning and could end up, while seeming to help us, actually end up harming us. And so we don't want that situation to happen. And so I appreciate Ms. Beck bringing that up. It certainly is something that we're paying very close attention to as well, and strategizing at the state level to try and make sure that we can do our part to make it more amenable to not just us, but jurisdictions throughout the state.
And the next item I wanted to mention that is noted in the packet is, and Ms. Beck alluded to this earlier, is the racial equity and social justice considerations. And as Committee Chair Rice mentioned, these came up in the context very much so of the South Lake Elementary School issue last fall, or last summer and then last fall. But it's obviously a countywide issue where the council and the executive have committed to a racial equity, social justice review lens, if you will, and how best to achieve that in different areas is a big challenge. Fortunately, I think with the school system, we actually have a lot of data already, which we don't have in other areas of review. So we have some advantages here in terms of data, but we don't yet have a process in place. So we're going to be working on this as we go, certainly this season, and try to be a little more deliberate about it as we move forward. But just wanted to note that that is an issue that the executive raised in his transmittal in January, and it's something that the council has raised most recently with South Lake, but in a number of other contexts. And it is an area we'll be looking at, and we have asked the schools to look at as part of their response to the executive's recommendations as well. So more to come on that.
Yeah, let me just say that, and thank you very much, Mr. Levchenko, for highlighting South Lake as a prime example to which this county, the county executive, MCPS, staff all work together to come up with a resolution, understanding that with the passage of our last CIP, we weren't necessarily adhering to all of the principles related to racial equity and social justice, namely South Lake Elementary School, and righted that wrong. But we had made a commitment from the very beginning, to be fair, saying that we knew we were going to have to come back to this. So, you know, as a full council, as MCPS and his staff, we had already said that this was something that wasn't going to sit well with us and we needed to fix. But I really think that, again, in light of where we are, the school system has started doing a really good job of identifying, and we saw that with the CIP in terms of the recommendations. South Lake was not recommended as a reduction item. They held it up, and so from that perspective, it does say that they are certainly on the right track. Let me turn to the author of our racial equity and social justice law, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to also remind ourselves that the amended bill, it did include a requirement for the county executive to also include in his budget transmittal sort of an explanation narrative as to, what decisions, why there was that decision made regarding school system request, which obviously in my conversation with the superintendent, the idea is that there would be that collaboration and that that narrative would be included. But you're absolutely right, Councilmember Rice. In reality, we have been doing this on our own. Every single time CIP comes through, whether we're talking about linkages to learning or any other kind of situation, I think there's some examples that do stand out, like South Lake, but also, Odessa Shannon Middle School as particular projects where it just fell through the cracks. And, when you start looking at the demographics and the conditions, et cetera, it's very glaring. But I also want to remind us that it's not as if there are specific places that will, schools, just a few of them that would fall under this category. The reality is that because of the makeup of Montgomery County Public Schools, if what we're looking at is its student demographic, then we know the vast majority of the schools are majority, students of color. We know that we have that map that was originally presented by Dr. Jerry Wiest, where you had the entire mapping of the county and you looked at the combination of poverty and mobility and ESOL all together. That map has not changed. As a matter of fact, it has gotten, wider or bigger. And so I do believe that when we talk about racial equity and social justice as it pertains to anything related to the school system, we're going to find that instead of that being sort of the exception, it's actually the default by which we have to make decisions. And so, just wanted to say that because I think across the board, that's going to have to just be something that we're going to continually have to sort of practice and apply. But there will be some outliers, and we did find a couple of those not too long ago that luckily we were able to address in a significant fashion. But I think I feel like in anything related to our school system, it's going to become almost a benchmark for how we're going to address all the other policy issues in the county through this racial equity and social justice lens. Across the board. So thank you for bringing that up. And I'm super excited that we're able to pause in each of these discussions and have that conversation, which again, in the past, it was just sort of like, maybe it came up, maybe it didn't. So that's really exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that, to piggyback off of what Councilmember Navarro was saying, it's kind of hard from the county executive standpoint because they're not identifying particular projects to be able to really have that true racial equity and social justice lens, right? When you're talking about dollars and cents, that can be spread across anything. Now, you can strategically look, and we should be doing this, strategically look at what projects are falling in what years and try and be mindful of that. But at the end of the day, it's much harder than it is to do at our level, which is at the MCPS level, and then for the county council who's appropriating the funds to really carry that out. But it's my hope that the executive continues to be mindful of how difficult an exercise this ends up being, which then forces us to make some really tough decisions that then may jeopardize the racial equity and social justice policies and priorities that we have that we want to see move forward. So it's difficult. It's a challenging process, but it's one that has to happen because we know so much is riding on it. So it's really important for us. So I don't see any other comments from my colleagues. We have a recommendation before us from council staff that basically we will do the same thing that we have done before, which is ask MCPS to come back with non-recommended reductions by, let's say, by early March, so maybe like the second week in March, if you could have those to us so that we could then start looking at those and taking those up in the context of budget. Then we'd be able to have some hearings to be able to discuss this sometime in late March, early April, and then be able to do CIP reconciliation. I would encourage us also, and this is really important, this is more for council staff and for executive staff and MCPS staff, that when it comes to CARES 2 and any potential offsets that we may be able to garner in terms of, you're making changes to buildings, not just based on other kinds of things, but also on the safety of the children and staff that are returning to the schools. And so hopefully some of that may be offset, by CARES funding. We may be able to utilize some of that. And so just something to think about. Again, it's not going to be our full freight, but every little bit helps. And so from that perspective, whatever we can do and thinking creatively about those things, I know that we will be very active on our side in terms of pushing the state to continue to think creatively and standing up our schools at this point, understanding that local jurisdictions just don't have the amount of money to invest as we want to, nor should. And so from that perspective, whatever flexibility they can give us to make these things move forward would be incredibly important. And then colleagues will take that up and make the appropriate decisions based on what we see from an affordability standpoint as well as a priority standpoint. So that is the recommendation that's before us from staff.
Just one clarification, Mr.
Yes,
Wright.
sir.
I'll prepare a letter for transmittal to the schools under your signature that will, more clarify exactly what we're asking for. You listed it here, and we'll put that in writing so that it's very clear. That's what we've done in the past. I think that makes it clear to everybody.
So colleagues, any objection to moving forward with that? Councilmember Jawanda.
I was just to say from the committee, I think whichever from the committee, but yeah, that works. Because I think we'd all like to have, I know you will copy us all on that and we'll send it forward.
All right, so I hear no objection, so we will move forward with that. Again, I really want to thank our school system, President Wolf. This is an unenviable task. We know every single year that we try and work through this, but rest assured that we will continue to try and do our part to find what we can to help on our end when it comes to affordability and making sure that we can try and move as many of these projects forward as possible. It's one of those things where, now that we've kind of broken the mold a bit in terms of coming back to things, if there is something that we know remains an outlier that we may need to come back to, we can certainly look at that in the context of where we are. It actually ended up working for us with South Lake, but I can't promise that again. That was a tough one to put out there as a promise from the council. We pulled it off with everybody, but certainly with this upcoming one, we need to try and push the envelope as much as possible, understanding our affordability standpoint, but, we don't know what the future holds. Hopefully with the vaccination, we do get some more positive outcomes from an economic perspective, which may help. We keep our fingers crossed for that, but we really just don't know at this point. So it's really difficult to try and pin those things down without having that certainty that's there for us. So. All right. Oh, Ms. Wolf, go ahead, please. Yes.
I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come today and also let you know that we will work with you to make whatever reductions that we may have to make, but I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that on behalf of the board, we're very disappointed in the county executive's recommended reduction to our capital budget. So we understand what you're going through, and we certainly will work with the staff to try to accomplish the goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wolf. We appreciate that and certainly understand where you're coming from wholeheartedly. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I see nothing else. We can be adjourned. Mr. Levchenko, you've got the marching orders from the council. We're good to go. Thank you to my colleagues. Appreciate it. Everyone, please stay safe. Remember, practice proper social distancing and wear your masks. Take care, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Papel en español. Este es el conteo de toda la población del país